What if the galaxy's quietest species, those seen as soft, peaceful, and harmless, were actually the most dangerous? When a cosmic threat wipes out entire star systems, the galaxy begs for help, and only the humans answer. But they don't come with armies. They come with something no one understands, something built not to conquer but to end everything. In 30 seconds, they change the course of history, and the galaxy learns a chilling truth. Humans don't avoid war because they're weak. They avoid it because they know they'll win. Sometimes, silence is the loudest threat of all. If you are new here, then please subscribe this channel and show thumbs up by liking the video. Now let's move to this wonderful story. The stars shimmered beyond the thick glass of the command deck, their light calm and distant. Captain Juno Vey stood at the helm of the Valkyra, the lead cruiser of the Dreskari defense fleet, staring into the empty darkness. He had served the Stellar Accord for over 20 years, had seen battles in 7 systems, but nothing prepared him for the silence that now filled the void. Silence, not peace, was dangerous in war. The latest reports were grim. The Void Eaters, a mysterious and hostile species, had swept through the outer rim systems. No survivors. Not a single signal left behind. It wasn't conquest. It wasn't revenge. They came. They drained stars of their energy and left dead husks in their wake. No one knew where they came from, and worse, no one knew how to stop them. Juno had once laughed at the rumors. No enemy is invincible, he had said. That was before he watched entire formations crumble, ships turn to floating wreckage, and friends burn to ash. The Valkyra and a few damaged ships were all that remained. He sent out a call for backup, for anyone who could help. But the silence that followed was louder than any scream. Beside him, First Officer Halric leaned over the console. "Still no word," he said, his voice low. "No reinforcements, no response." "They're protecting themselves," Juno muttered. "Cowards. All of them." Halric didn't reply. He didn't need to. The truth hung in the air. Every species in the Accord had turned inward. Even the stronger ones refused to risk their fleets. Then the proximity alarm blinked. "Contact," the navigator called. Multiple jumps, bearing human signatures. Juno frowned. Humans? A moment later, 5 ships appeared in formation. Sleek, silver, and unimposing by Dreskari standards. Their hulls were smooth, lacking the heavy armor of war vessels. It was laughable. Juno felt a bitter chuckle rise in his throat. The humans, soft-spoken, trade-loving, always mediating disputes, had shown up with 5 ships, not even warships. Support vessels, maybe. A message flashed through. Juno nodded, and the view screen shifted to reveal the face of a human, pale-skinned with short dark hair and sharp eyes. "Federation vessel, this is Commander Theo Marin of the Terran Peace Corps. We're here to assist." Juno stepped forward. "You're a little late, Commander. We've lost 2/3 of our force, and you've come with 5 ships?" Marin nodded once. "We're aware. We received the call. We came as soon as we could." "With respect," Juno said, trying to stay polite, "you should join our retreat. The Void Eaters will be on us again soon. Your ships won't hold. They already destroyed better than what you brought." Marin raised an eyebrow. "We didn't come to retreat, Captain. We came to finish this." The bridge fell silent. Juno blinked. "You came to fight?" "To end it," Marin said calmly. Juno stared at the screen. "Humans aren't fighters. You're diplomats. You've never even been in a proper war." Marin's eyes narrowed slightly. "You misunderstand us. We avoid war because we've already had too many, and we learned the cost." Juno scoffed. "Or you avoid it because you know you can't win one." Marin didn't argue. He simply said, "Let's hope you never find out how wrong you are." Juno wanted to argue more, to tell the man to turn around before his crew was slaughtered. But something about the way Marin spoke made him pause. There was no arrogance, no bluff, just certainty. "What's your plan?" Juno asked finally. "We've developed a tool," Marin said. "It's dangerous. It's never been used before." That didn't sound promising. "Define dangerous." "There's a chance, small but real, that it could destroy more than just the enemy. Space itself might be damaged, but the probability is low, and we believe it's the only chance. Juno's mouth went dry. Why would you build something like that? Marin looked directly into the camera. Because one day, something like the Void Eaters was bound to arrive, and we promised ourselves, if that day came, we wouldn't run. A deep, uneasy silence fell over the bridge again. Juno turned to Halric. Neither of them spoke, but their eyes said enough. This was madness. Back, on screen, Marin gave a calm order to his crew. Prepare the fracture protocol. A moment later, one of the human ships launched a single missile. Juno gripped the railing. Wait, what's in that warhead? Everything, Marin replied. The missile moved slowly, deliberately, through the dark. The Void Eaters didn't react. Maybe they thought it was too small to matter. Then it exploded. There was no fire, no shockwave, just a soundless ripple that expanded like a tide. Light bent. Space cracked. For a moment it felt like the stars themselves were afraid. The Void Eater ships at the center of the blast vanished. The ones further out came apart slowly, piece by piece, as though something invisible was consuming them. Within a minute, the enemy fleet was gone. Gone. Juno couldn't speak. His crew was frozen, staring at the empty screen. Halric swallowed hard. What was that? Commander Marin's voice returned. Let's just say that's why we don't start wars. And with that, the human ships turned, jumped, and were gone. Juno remained silent for a long time. All he could think was this. The quiet ones were the ones you should fear most. The stars outside the observation deck looked the same, but something had changed. Commander Theo Marin stood alone, watching the emptiness where the Void Eater fleet once hovered. There was no trace left. No debris, no damaged hulls, not even the flicker of heat signatures, just silence. His reflection in the glass stared back at him, and for the first time in a long while he felt uneasy not because of fear, but because of what they had done. Down in the core chamber, Lieutenant Rena Doss ran her final diagnostics on the fracture. Device's housing. She had built it with a team of 12, most of whom had left the project halfway through. Some said it was too risky. Others couldn't sleep at night, afraid of what they were helping create. Only Rena stayed, not because she believed in it completely, but because she believed someone had to know how to stop it, if ever needed. The fracture protocol was not just a weapon. It was a warning written in physics, a tear in the laws of space designed to unmake matter at a molecular level. It didn't explode in fire or metal. It unraveled what it touched, like peeling a thread that held the universe together. When Theo first proposed deploying it, half the advisory board called him insane. But he had spent years studying threats like the Void Eaters, creatures that didn't seek power or peace but simply destroyed for reasons no one could understand. Against that kind of danger, negotiation was useless. Back on the bridge, Juno Vey stood frozen, eyes locked on the black screen where the Void Eaters had been moments ago. He didn't like humans. Never had. Their quiet confidence always struck him as arrogance hidden behind friendly smiles. But now, after what he had seen, he didn't know what to think. Are they all like that? He asked Halric, still staring. Halric glanced over. Like what? Calm, while unleashing the end of the world. Juno wasn't joking. He had seen powerful weapons before, but never something that could erase a fleet in seconds. He remembered Theo's face, calm, thoughtful, even kind. And yet behind those eyes was a decision so final, so absolute it shook him to his core. Inside the Terran ship Vigilant Horizon, the crew didn't celebrate. There were no cheers, no claps on the back. Instead, they returned to their duties like nothing had happened. That was the part that disturbed most outsiders the most. Humans did not boast about their power. They didn't flaunt their weapons. They used them quietly, as if they were simply solving a problem, not ending lives. That kind of focus, that kind of discipline made them more dangerous than anyone realized. Milo Thane, The lead engineer who had monitored the detonation from a shielded bay looked over the data. The aftermath was still unfolding. The nanite swarm deployed by the fracture device had done more than expected. It had not only taken out the voidiators, it had destabilized the gravity well of a nearby moon, which was now beginning to collapse. He flagged the information and sent it to command. Collateral damage was always a risk. Theo stepped into the engineering bay quietly. Milo handed him the tablet without a word. They both looked at the results for a while. Then Milo said, We're off. The chain reaction spread further than we calculated. Theo nodded slowly. How bad? Bad enough. Not a planet, but that moon's not going to survive the day. Silence passed between them. It worked, though, Milo added. They're gone. Theo didn't smile. That's what scares me. Later that day, Theo stood before his crew, not to praise them, but to remind them why they were here. We did what we had to, he said. No one else would have stepped in. We didn't do this for medals. We did it because no one else could. But don't let this make us proud. Let it make us careful. Every head nodded. Some eyes were downcast. Not because they were ashamed, but because they understood the weight of what they had unleashed. Meanwhile, in the political halls of the Stellar Accord, the whispers had begun. The official report had just come in. It was brief, clinical, and terrifying. One projectile, one human device, an entire enemy force, gone. The representatives of the core worlds gathered in quiet chambers, unsure what to say. They had once laughed at humans. Now they feared them. Ambassador Leah Moren stood alone in the council chamber balcony, watching a soft rain fall through the skylight. She had warned them for years. Humans were not peaceful because they were weak. They were peaceful because they remembered what it felt like to destroy. She remembered her grandfather's stories of Earth's darkest wars. Entire continents on fire, millions lost. That memory lived in their bones. That fear shaped their choices. And now the galaxy had seen what happened when the line was crossed. The fracture protocol was never meant to be used. It was created as a final measure, a whisper from humanity to the stars. We don't want to fight, but if we must, we won't lose. Back on the Valkyra, Junove sat in his private quarters, listening to the replay of the human broadcast. He heard Theo Marin's calm words again, not boastful, not angry, just honest. He thought about war, about all the times he had raised a weapon with pride. But now, as he stared out into the night, he finally understood. True strength wasn't shown in how loud you could strike. It was in how long you could hold your hand before doing so, and when the quiet ones finally struck, nothing ever survived. The chamber of the Stellar Accord Senate buzzed with tension. Representatives from every known species in the galaxy had gathered for an emergency session. The memory of what had happened was still fresh, spreading across worlds like a shadow. The Voidiators, the unstoppable force that had destroyed system after system, were gone, wiped out in moments. Not by an alliance of fleets, not by superior tactics, but by 5 human ships and a weapon no one had seen before. The silence that followed had turned into whispers of fear. Speaker Orlan Devrick, an elder statesman of the Varnok, stood at the center of the room. He had served for decades, guided the Accord through conflicts and diplomacy. But even he couldn't find the words to begin. Everyone waited. It was clear they didn't just want answers, they wanted comfort. But there was none to give. Finally, the doors at the far end opened and a young courier entered. His uniform was torn, his eyes wide with something close to panic. He walked straight to the center podium and gave a formal bow. I bring the field report from the battlefront. I witnessed it myself. No one interrupted him. His voice trembled, slightly. The Voidiators were destroyed completely. There were no survivors. Their fleet didn't retreat. They didn't even have time to fire back. There were murmurs, some gasps. Orlan raised a hand to quiet the room. How is that possible? The courier's eyes flicked to the human delegate, Ambassador Leah Morin, seated silently among the representatives. It was the humans. They used something. I don't even know how to describe it. One missile. One event. Space itself broke apart. I've never seen anything like it. The room erupted. Voices shouted across aisles. Some accused the humans of hiding dangerous weapons. Others demanded to know why they hadn't shared this technology before. Fear, more than anger, filled the air. Ambassador Morin stood slowly. Her voice wasn't loud, but it carried through the chaos. We never shared it because we never meant to use it. A delegate from the Tharian Confederacy snapped back. Then, why build it at all? Because we hoped we'd never need it, Leah said, her face calm but her eyes tired. Because sometimes hope isn't enough. Orlan stepped in. Ambassador, you must understand the fear this causes. The Voidiators were unstoppable, and your people ended them in seconds. If you have that kind of power, we also have rules, Leah interrupted gently. That's what makes us different. We don't act because we can. We act because we must. The fracture protocol was designed only for a threat we couldn't reason with. There was silence for a moment. Then, another voice spoke up from the gallery. It was Vel Arman, a strategist from the aggressive Krask Empire. You say you control it, but what if one day you don't? What if your leaders change? What if the humans forget to be afraid of themselves? That question settled in the room like a cold wind. Leah didn't answer right away. Then she said, "That's our burden, and our responsibility." Outside the chamber, away from the politics, others were having the same conversation in hushed tones. Scientists studied the weapon's signature and found anomalies in local space that hadn't settled. Philosophers debated whether the humans had crossed a moral line. Children on distant planets asked their parents if the humans were heroes or monsters. No one seemed to know. On a civilian transport ship between stations, a teacher played the news footage for her students. The final burst of the human weapon had been captured from a distance by a passing probe. The video was brief, but haunting. One moment there was a fleet and the next nothing. No sound, no light, only stillness. One student raised her hand. "Miss Tara, are the humans the strongest species now?" The teacher hesitated. "Maybe, but strength doesn't always mean danger." "But they scared everybody," the child said. "Yes," Tara replied softly. "Sometimes being scared makes people think harder." Back in the Senate, Orlan called for calm. "We must decide what comes next. Do we ask for oversight of human weapons? Do we place sanctions? Or do we place our trust in them?" No one answered immediately. Even the usual loud voices were quiet. In the corner of the chamber, Leah Morin simply waited. Not defending, not persuading, just present. Then Senator Halvan, one of the oldest members of the Accord, stood. "Maybe. The question isn't whether we trust them. Maybe the question is whether we understand them at all." The debate continued for hours, but no decisions were made that day. The fear wasn't just about the weapon. It was about not knowing what kind of people would build such a thing and never speak of it. The humans had shown what they could do, but also what they were willing not to do, and that somehow was even more frightening. In quiet corners of the galaxy, leaders sent private messages to Earth. Some were offers of alliance, others were veiled threats. But most were questions written between lines. What else are you hiding? And far away in the shadows of a quiet Earth evening, the team that had activated the fracture protocol returned to their homes. They didn't talk about it. They didn't need to. The echoes of fear had already begun, and they would reach every corner of the stars. The clouds above Earth's capital city drifted slowly, casting soft shadows across the quiet courtyard of the United Terran Council. Commander Theo Marin sat on a stone bench near the garden wall, a small device in his hand. It was the inactive prototype of the fracture protocol, cool, silent, and harmless now. He stared at it, The same way one might look at an old weapon buried after war, not with pride, but with the weight of memory. Around him, the world carried on. Children played, birds chirped, and wind rustled the leaves. It was hard to believe that just days ago he had stood at the edge of total destruction. Far from Earth in the Stellar Accord's central hub, the Senate reconvened once more. But the energy had shifted. Discussions that used to be full of noise and strong opinions were now measured, careful. The presence of humans in the chamber brought tension, but also a strange calm. Everyone was more polite. No one raised their voice. Even the most aggressive delegates had begun to choose their words with care. The fracture protocol had not only defeated the Voidiators, it had revealed a truth no one was ready to accept. Humanity, once dismissed as harmless diplomats, held the key to the most terrifying power the galaxy had ever seen. In a small observation room above the chamber, Ven Laro, a historian from the Cavallari archives, spoke quietly into a recorder. His voice was soft but clear. For generations we believed that strength meant domination. The strongest species in the Accord were those with the biggest fleets, the longest borders, and the fiercest soldiers. But now our assumptions are shaken. The humans didn't win because they were stronger in number. They won because they knew when not to fight. That may be the rarest power of all. Across the stars, different societies reacted in their own ways. Some panicked, others studied, and some, like the Nareth scholars, simply asked questions. Among them was Ina Sel, a child prodigy known for her thoughtful nature. She stood before her teachers and peers, holding a report she had prepared on the Terran intervention. Her voice was steady. The humans chose restraint not because they were weak, but because they were afraid of their strength. They feared what they might become if they let themselves use it too often. In that fear, I think, lies hope. Meanwhile, on a moon orbiting the abandoned Void Eater systems, a small exploration team from the Accord arrived to examine what was left. They found nothing. Not just ruins, but complete erasure. The star itself was dimmer, its energy still settling after being disrupted. No signals, no fragments, no evidence of the enemy's biology remained. It was as if they had never existed. The leader of the team, a scientist named Merrick Dolan, sent a message back. The weapon left no trace. It did what war never could, ended something completely. I'm not sure we should ever let that happen again. Back on Earth, in a closed-door session, the Terran Council debated their future role in galactic affairs. Some urged them to step forward, to claim leadership now that the galaxy saw their strength. Others argued for retreat, to protect what peace remained. Theo was asked to speak, and when he did, his words were simple. We didn't win anything. We stopped a disaster, but at what cost? Fear is not the kind of peace we ever wanted. He looked around the room. If we lead through fear, we'll be just like those we stopped. But if we lead with honesty, with responsibility, we might be what this galaxy needs. That night, Theo returned to the same garden. He knelt by the base of an old tree and dug a small hole. The prototype in his hand, once capable of leveling fleets, now looked almost innocent. He placed it in the earth and covered it gently. No ceremony, no fanfare, just a quiet promise to never need it again. A message arrived the next day from the Accord. They had voted to invite the Terran Union to lead a newly formed peacekeeping order. It was not a military alliance, but a commitment to balance, to caution, to shared strength without fear. The vote was close, but it passed. As the message was read aloud, Ambassador Leah Morin stood at a podium in front of the Accord delegates. She looked each of them in the eye. We accept, she said. But understand this. We are not here to rule. We are here to remind all of us, ourselves included, that restraint is not weakness. It is the price of peace. Some nodded. Others looked unsure. But no one interrupted. The final chapter of the Void Eater War was not written with victory, but with understanding. The galaxy had changed, not because the strongest had risen, but because the quietest had finally spoken. And in their voice was not a roar, but a warning. that even peace, when threatened, has a cost. And those who know the cost best are the ones most determined not to pay it again.